Hello, my name is Kshitij Sharma, and today I will be presenting our paper with title Assessing Cognitive Performance Using Physiological and Facial Features, Generalizing Across Contexts. This is a paper that I wrote with three of my colleagues, Evangelos, Michail, and Vassilis from NTNU, Delft, and University of Melbourne. So let's start with what we did in this paper. So in this paper, we started moving from context dependency to generalizability of features. These features were computed from facial and physiological responses of participants. And unlike other papers where they use, even if they use a bunch of studies, the studies are very similar in context. So the context-independent features are a bit difficult to find. And in this paper, we used 4 studies from very diverse contexts, and then we applied machine learning pipelines to find generalizable features. I want to emphasize that this is not a paper on transfer learning, and I will come back to this towards the end of the presentation. We propose a new feature generalizability index to quantify the generalizability of a given feature based on how well it performs in a different context. And finally, there is a wrapper context here, which is cognitive performance, because we do not claim that we have found features that are universally generalizable. We can say that within the context of cognitive performance, we have achieved significant generalizability of features. Now the question is, why is feature generalizability so important? So feature generalizability is important because arbitrary knowledge about which features to compute and how in a new context is very important, given that in Ubicom situations, there are certain contexts where you don't have some time to play with the data and to define which features to compute in an in situ experiment. We used facial data in this paper because emotions have a very close proximity to cognitive performance, and recent studies have shown that physiological responses also have nice proxies to cognitive performance. Now, to achieve this goal of finding generalizable features or finding a method to claim that if a feature is generalizable or not, we use a highly diverse set of contexts. So for example, we use some games, some self-assessment tests, some debugging problems. We engineer features from these contexts. We engineer features from the data collected from these contexts, especially facial and physiological responses. Then we trained the model on dataset A and tested it on dataset B. And based on the training and testing performances, the comparison of the two performances in terms of residual error, we come up with a generalizable set of features. So the first data set is when our participants were playing Pac-Man. The second data set is when our participants were answering an adaptive self-assessment test. So this test adapts the difficulty of questions based on how you have performed until now. Then the third data set consists of the data when participants were solving 5 debugging problems. And finally, the last data set that we used was about an eye tracking game. So the player was controlling the avatar using their eyes. And this data set was kept separate to do a final test of generalizable features. So the first 3 were used to figure out the generalizable features with the training on one and testing on another. And the 4th data set was kept aside so that we can finally test the set of generalizable features from our exercises. A quick overview of which features we extracted. So from facial features, we extracted how our muscles move on face, so the action units, and also each frame of the facial video was passed to a VGG16 that gave us 1,000 features at the end. From time series data of physiological features, we computed value and spectral histograms. We also computed autoregressive moving average, but we then moved on to a little bit more advanced features that were gauge. So, it's basically similar to ARMA models, but with a small difference that when ARMA model captured the mean of the time series, gauge models captured the variance of the time series. And also we captured information about the shape of the signal both in time and frequency domain. Once we were done with the feature extraction, basically we were done with the steps until feature extraction in this figure. We went 2 different ways. One was feature selection with linear lasso or nonlinear random forest, and the dimensionality reduction processes, a simple PCA or a nonlinear kernel PCA. Once we had our training and testing results, what we wanted to come up as generalizability index is how similar these 2 sets of results are. And for that, we used a statistical test called ANOSIM. Intuitively, ANOSIM works exactly like ANOVA, but instead of analyzing the variance between 2 sets, it analyzes the similarity between the 2 sets. So if the ANOSIM gives us significant results, that means the two sets are similar. And this is what we wanted to see from the training and testing sets, as I said before. And feature generalizability index is R in this case, and the p-value represents the significance of ANOSIM. And the NAs have same data sets for training and testing. So 1, 5, and 9 have same data sets for training and testing, so it doesn't make sense to claim generalizability of any sorts. But when the data sets are different in training and testing stages, then there is some sense in claiming generalizability. And here we can see that when we are training on one and testing on other, there is no generalizability to be claimed. But when we are training on more than one data sets and testing on one, then the ANOSIM turns out to be significant. That means the pipelines are generalizable, and by extension, the features used in those pipelines are generalizable. And finally, we also show that if we use only the generalizable set of features, we get a very decent prediction of below 10% error with the untouched data set of eye tracking K. So what does all this mean, basically? So the first thing that we found is gauge features were very generalizable. That means capturing the variance in the time series is important, because the variance, as it connects with cognitive performance, is generalizable across contexts. What we found also that emotions are very context specific, because action units turned out to be context specific. As I said before, that this is not transfer learning, because the idea of transfer learning is to transfer the whole model from one context to other, and still the contexts have to be similar to each other. In our case, the data sets don't have to be from similar contexts, and we are transferring only the features, actually the names of the features, and how to compute them. With that note, I will stop here, and I hope you have questions for me in the question and answer session, or you can write to me on this given mail. Thank you.